It's now or never. Some people are actually leading you, or rather leading us, into killing each other. Now it's time that we say no to that. You know who you are. Nobody's gonna tell you what to do, because there's only one man that can give or take life, Jah, the Creator. No one is supposed to take life but Jah Rastafari. So right now we're singing this song to peace in South Africa, not only amongst blacks, but to say to everybody, we say black and white, we want to be together as one. Jah everywhere in the world, people are fighting for freedom. Freedom, yeah. Nobody knows what is right. Nobody knows what is wrong. Black man say it's a white man. White man say it's a black man. He can say it's the colored. Colored say it's everyone. Your mother didn't tell you the truth, 'cause my father didn't tell me the truth. Nobody knows what is wrong and what is wrong. How long is this gonna last? 'Cause we've come so far. Well, you gotta let you and I wanna take a way, don't take. Bury down a party, fight on war and crime, racial discrimination, tribal discrimination. Bury down a party, fight on war and crime, racial discrimination, tribal discrimination. Bury down a party, fight on war and crime, racial discrimination, tribal discrimination. When it started, you and I were not there. We don't know where the hell it's coming from and why don't we? I am not saying this because I'm a coward, but I'm thinking of the lives that we lose every time we fight. Killing innocent people, yeah, women and children, yeah. Who doesn't know about the government? Who doesn't know about the wars? Your mother didn't tell you the truth, 'cause my father didn't tell me. Yeah, nobody knows what is wrong and what is wrong. Black man say it's a white man. White man say it's a black man. Indian say it's colored. Colored say it's everyone. Well, we started, you and I were not there. We don't know where it's coming from. Why don't we? Come on and bury down apartheid. Fight down war and crime, racial discrimination, tribal discrimination. Come on and bury down apartheid. Fight down war and crime, racial discrimination, tribal discrimination. Come on and bury down apartheid. Fight down war and crime, racial discrimination, tribal discrimination. Come on and bury. Fight down war and crime, racial discrimination, tribal discrimination.
Welcome to our program as usual. Today we want just to look at what happened to the World Sikh organizations. First of all, I would like just to thank big up to Mrs. Sukhvinda, big up to lawyer Colin Gonsalve, big up to everyone who was there. Thank you. It was too extremely the best event yesterday. What was this event? The event was featuring for the World Sikh organization's dinner. Everyone was there, and there's a lot of fun to different people enjoyed for this event. Thank you. What was there? Let me tell you. What was to the World Sikh organization yesterday is extremely the best human value. We are talking about the genocide. The government of India and all different its supporters, they were just against the minority, and this is one of our main concerns. Why that today we are very much concerned about the Egypt revolution in Egypt, the recent revolution in Egypt, and other revolutions in Libya, but we forget what happened in 1984. Our guest speaker yesterday was lawyer and engineer, prominent lawyer and engineer from India, Mr. Colin Gonsalve. There were a lot of people. It was so fun to hear different human rights abuses around the world, especially India. People may think that India is a democratic country, but they don't know what is really inside. And how are we going to address those human rights abuses? Yeah. Many people in 1984 were killed, massacred, as it is in the Rwandan genocide. But these people have been forgotten because those who involved into the massacre are right now under the power triadics. They are under the government support of India. 2. Our guest speaker yesterday, lawyer, prominent lawyer, whom I'm going to talk about, he addressed the issue of human rights abuses all over the world. And he talked about another point about the torture, the rights of prisoners, imprisonment without trial in India, the threat against the human rights advocates, lawyers. When he was addressing all these things, I was thinking about what happened in France, 1789 revolution. France, 1789 revolution, when King Louis XVI turned against his own people. And what happened? It was the reign of terror. Robespierre and others, lawyers, were killed, imprisoned, and taken out of their home country. This is the situation which happens today in our large economy, India. He talks about the citizenship and the state building, how here we celebrate people who contributed to rebuild Canada, but we forget the citizens. He talked about the genocide of 1984. He talked about the Egyptian, what we call Tanmian Square, or the recent revolution in Egypt. How do we celebrate, remember the revolution, the massacre in Egypt, but also we forget what happened in India, 1984. Human rights abuses. The threat to justice everywhere is a threat. A threat to injustice everywhere is another threat to justice everywhere. That's why we need to, I call upon you, all human rights agencies, Mrs. Sharon, to come up and support the Sikh organization to fight for their rights in India, the minority. Those are some of the ideas that we are at the dinner party. It was about human rights. How do we support the people being massacred in India and everywhere by protecting their rights? Freedom, equality before the law, freedom of speech, and other human rights values. Let us see what Dr. Engineer, Lawyer Colin Gonsalve say. Big up.
I came in 2011 and I had the experience of a lifetime. Meeting with my brother and sisters from Canada, the Sikhs from Canada, and the human rights activists here. When I came in 2011, we started by remembering the genocide of 1984 and the killing of Sikhs in Delhi and elsewhere. We lamented the fact that government after government set up commission of inquiry after commission of inquiry, not to do justice to the Sikhs, but to cover up for the massacres that took place in broad daylight. We lamented the fact that police officers refused to file complaints against persons who had committed the most gruesome murders. Prosecutions were deliberately sabotaged by the Delhi police. And ultimately the convictions were very few. And then the ultimate insult of having the chief organizers of the massacre being appointed as cabinet ministers and given high positions in the Manmohan Singh government. Then we spoke of the killings in the Punjab that took place thereafter. Thousands of young Sikh boys picked up from their homes, from the gurudwaras, from schools, picked up, tortured in custody, and then disappeared. And we spoke of how there was not a prosecution to be done, and there was no one ready to hear the cries of the people from the Punjab. There was no justice possible at all. And then we remembered Shaheed Jaswant Singh Khalra, who accidentally stumbled upon the list of those who were burnt in the crematoriums clandestinely, and how he came to Canada in 1995, disclosed the list before the Canadian Parliament, and then wanted to go back. And I stayed in the house of one Mr. Aman in Toronto, and he told me that he spoke to Kalra Saab And he told Kalra Sahib, don't go back. And Kalra Sahib replied, pray for me, should I ever stray from the path of martyrdom. And then you know the story, he went back, he was picked up, he had a family and children, and he was disappeared. And the person who, or the persons who conspired to kill him have never been brought to justice. That was the story in 2011. That is the story today. The wheels of justice move very slowly in my country. 84 was a social experiment. Can you kill members of the minority section? Can you massacre people in their thousands, and yet the legal system will not act? Can you bring the legal system to a grinding halt and do genocide with impunity? And the answer with the 84 genocide was, the answer was yes. The Indian legal system is so fragile that when it comes to the prosecution of persons who kill members of the minority community, the legal system will not work. That was the success of that experiment of 1984. We saw that experiment repeated in 1992 in Bombay, where 3,000 Muslims were killed on the streets of my city, Bombay, where I was working as a social activist. Once again, engineered by the parties in power, who are today in power in the central government in New Delhi, in this new government. Those who engineered the massacre of 1992 are now, their parties are now in power at the center in the Modi government. Same experiment, same result. No prosecutions, no convictions, no punishment, no justice for the Muslims of Bombay. We saw it repeated in 2002 in Gujarat. That great successful experiment which brought Modi such prominence in society that he can discipline the minorities. With an iron fist, he can teach them a lesson, and nobody would dare prosecute any of the politicians who engineered the massacre. So the experiment repeated again and again and again. And there were, of course, people who stood up. In every city, there were people who stood up and fought. And I must mention for Gujarat, there was one Mukul Sinha, an advocate and dear friend of ours, who fought relentlessly for the prosecution of all those involved in the massacre. I mention him because he died recently of cancer. Until the end, till the last moments, he would call his friends and say, there's a case in the court, can you appear? I don't think I'll be able to appear, can you appear for us? A relentless fight for justice. The symbol of what Indian activism stands for, that no matter how strong the opposition, no matter how powerful the state, no matter how long it takes to get justice in this country, there are thousands of people ready to stand and fight for justice. Then in 2007, you had the massacre of 100+ Christians in Kandamal and the burning of their houses. An 80% acquittal rate of those who were prosecuted. And then 2013, the killings in Muzaffarnagar in Uttar Pradesh, where the social experiment was taken to its zenith. Where Amit Shah, who is Mr. Modi's right-hand man in Gujarat, was sent to Uttar Pradesh. And miraculously, a massive riot takes place. The polarization of society takes place along the lines of religion. And those who attack remain unrepentant. We will not apologize. We have done nothing wrong. We need to discipline the minority community. And it was that act of majoritarian defiance which got the present Modi government such a massive swing of votes in Uttar Pradesh that the BJP did not have to think of any alliance and coalition and so on. They could lead the country with an absolute majority in parliament. What an experiment! consolidate the majoritarian vote, dominate the minorities. Don't care at all about the vote of the minorities if you can consolidate and bring together the majoritarian vote and lead the country on the basis not of democracy and secularism and, you know, every community walking together and so on, but lead the country on the basis of a single religious identity. What a crisis for India. I know that in some circles it's lauded as a great chance for development in India, and there will be development, there's no doubt about that. There will be bridges and chemical factories and roads and, I suppose, telecommunication and so on. But I fear for the future, and I will tell you in a few minutes why I fear for the future of India, notwithstanding the fact that development in that material, technological sense will take place. But I fear for the development of India as a nation, and I fear for the development of democracy in our great country. After I came in 2011, I must thank all of you for what you did, because the WSO supported a small initiative in India called the Kalra Center for Human Rights Defenders. And we set it up with the idea of supporting every human rights activist who comes under attack. The work is just beginning, and we've had some success in India, and I want to tell you some happy stories along with the misery that we go through in India. First of all, I want to tell you about Devinder Pal Singh Buller, who was accused of a terrorist act. And just to remind all of you who may not remember the story now, the senior-most judge on a 3-judge bench said, "This evidence is obtained on the basis of fraud. It is obtained on the basis of a confession given to a police officer, which is generally not admissible in evidence in Indian law. But at that time, there was a draconian legislation in place called TADA, the Terrorist and Disruptive Activities Act, which permitted for the first time a confession to a police officer to be used in court. A confession to a judge can be used in court, no doubt, but a confession to a police officer is never admissible in evidence. And Buller's confession was taken with a thumbprint. And the court relied on that to convict him and sentence him to death. And the senior-most judge said, "Conviction is most hazardous. I would acquit Devinder Pal Singh Buller." But 2 judges were there on the other side, and they formed a majority, and Buller's conviction was confirmed by the Supreme Court. When I came in 2011, we were quite despondent. We didn't think that Buller could be saved. We believe in his innocence. We believe that that confession was obtained by force and fraud. But we didn't think he had a chance. And then something quite remarkable happened. A series of 10 cases of convict prisoners whose conviction had been confirmed by the Supreme Court came before the Supreme Court. And it came before a 3-judge bench headed by Justice Satha Shivam, the then Chief Justice of India. A rather remarkable man. Towards the end of his career, I must say he was a sort of inspired man. And we took these cases before the Chief Justice's bench, arguing that every one of the death sentence convicts had made an application for mercy to the President, and the President had delayed in dismissing their mercy petitions. And the delay was to the tune of 5, 10, and 15 years, and so on. And we argued that delay by the President in dealing with a mercy petition is tantamount to cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment akin to torture. Because you keep a man every day waiting. Is my mercy petition going to be granted? Is it going to be rejected? And for 10 years you live under the sword of execution. And they were kept like that for long periods of time. These cases came before the court in a rather unusual way, The convict prisoners were looking through the bars of their cell, looking down at the courtyard where the gallows were being prepared. It was evening, 4 o'clock. And they could see that the gallows were being cleaned and the rope was being prepared. And then the superintendent of jail came to them and said, what nice food would you like to have tonight, sir? The irony of the death sentence convict is that you're given wonderful food just before you're executed. And they contacted journalists immediately, and the journalists called Delhi at about 7 in the evening. And we rushed to the Supreme Court, which was obviously closed. And we requested the Registrar General of the Supreme Court to take us before the Chief Justice in his house. It was for me quite a turning point, quite a miraculous thing. He called us in at midnight. I remember going with all our books, asking for a stay order. And he took us in warmly, Justice Sathashivam. Please remember that name. You know, he's really a person who changed the law on death sentences in a sense in our country. And he took us in and said, keep your books aside, I don't need any arguments. Just tell me, how many years did the president take to decide the mercy petition? And I said, sir, between 4 and 15 years. And he granted stay in all 10 cases. The midnight stay at the residence of the Chief Justice, and he told his registrar, don't go home. Phone every single jail superintendent where these persons are being incarcerated and tell them that you're the Registrar General of the Supreme Court and that the stay has been granted so that by mistake no one is executed tomorrow morning. And they stayed till the early hours of the morning making phone calls. Now, Devinder Pal Singh Buller wasn't part of this batch. But the court took these 10 cases and ultimately delivered judgment in a famous case called the Shatrughan Chauhan case, and held that a delay by the president which cannot be reasonably explained will automatically result in the death sentence commuted to life. Buller's case came after that. And dealing with Buller's case, the Chief Justice asked a simple question. He said, we've already decided the point of law. Tell me in Buller's case, what was the delay? And the answer was given of some 12 or 15 years delay in the deciding of the mercy petition. And Buller's death sentence was automatically commuted. Then the Rajiv Gandhi assassination cases came before the court and the same question was asked. And once again, the answer was 10, 12 years, and the Rajiv Gandhi assassination convict prisoners were granted commutation. I must tell you a little story about the Rajiv Gandhi case because, to my mind, what happened in '84 in the Punjab spread, the civil war spread right across the country. And the suffering of the Sikhs became the suffering of large sections of the Indian populations in many states. So we have a common history of pain and suffering, a common history of injustice, and a common fervor and desire to fight for and achieve justice no matter how much time passes. We will not let the issue die. I must tell you about Perari Valan. He was a young boy, maybe 19 or 20. He was studying in college in the south. And he was doing electrical engineering, so he had a project to make electrical batteries. So he made many, many electrical batteries and gave them to his friends to use on a radio or whatever. An LTTE person contacted one of his friends. They wanted to make a bomb, so they contacted one of his friends and they said, just ask Perari Valan for a battery. They had no idea what it was being used for. And Perari Valan said, sure, go ahead, take one of the batteries on my shelf. And they took that battery to make a bomb. Perari Valan was in a cinema hall, watching a movie, when that fateful bomb exploded and Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated. And he came out of the cinema hall, and his friends told him, Perari Valan, run. Rajiv Gandhi has been assassinated. And before he could even take to his heels, the police had nabbed him and charged him with the murder of Rajiv Gandhi. I met him in jail much after his death sentences were commuted by the Supreme Court. This was many years, many decades later. He was a much older man now. And he was, holding the bars of his jail. And it's like a lion's cage, actually, just stone, nothing in the room. And he stands like that, tears streaming down his face. And he says, Mr. Advocate, please try and save me. And coming up from outside was the superintendent of the jail, and he tells me, Mr. Gonsalve, save this man. The superintendent of the jail, save this man. He is my best prisoner. And then he shows me photographs of Perarivalan teaching, the under trials, computer classes and English classes, and he's done his MA and he's done his computer degree and so on and so forth, and he's a model prisoner. And so I remember when we argued the case in the High Court, Mr. Jethmalani was leading us and I was for one of the convict prisoners, Perarivalan. We were asking for stay on his execution. And a room like this, or half this size, was packed with about 1,000 people. And after the arguments were over, the judge said briefly, stay on execution granted. And the whole courtroom erupted with joy. And there was thunderous applause. And I remember as we left the courtroom and went outside, there were lawyers in the corridor standing and applauding. What is it about this death sentence? What is it about criminal justice in India? That you can have the state, the people of the state, lawyers, everyone, so supportive of, what you would say in traditional, in a traditional way, if you look at it, assassins or whatever. Because they knew the real story of those young boys who were implicated in that case. And tragically, many years later, the head judge of the court said, I made a mistake in sentencing these boys to death. Widely reported in the newspapers of India. The senior-most judge on the bench said, I made a mistake in sentencing these boys to death. Anyway, they're all out on death row now. And in Buller's case, we are hopeful that in a couple of years or maybe more, but sometime in the future, Buller will get out of jail and be a free man once again. The civil war that started, as I told you, with the 1984 genocide spread to many parts of the country. I want to tell you a little bit about Manipur. A small part in the northeast of India, forgotten by India, where recently the widows of the disappeared and the mothers of the disappeared put together an extraordinary compilation of 1,534 disappearances in Manipur over the last 10 years. Meticulously documented cases of young Manipuri boys being picked up by the police and security forces, interrogated, tortured, and killed. We took that case before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court appointed an investigation team headed by a retired Supreme Court judge. They put the officers, the colonels, the majors of the army in the witness box. It's generally not done. You don't generally take officers because they claim immunity, so you don't generally put them in the witness box to be cross-examined. They say they have a right to remain silent, but mysteriously they came before the court and they gave testimony. I want to tell you one cross-examination, give you an example of one cross-examination to show you how the commandos and the security forces and the Indian Army behave in our country, which is well known to you all, but I must tell you about Manipur. So there was this major who came and said, I was standing at a barricade. 2 terrorists came towards me from a particular village. I said, stop. They continued marching towards me. I said, stop. They continued walking. We opened fire. We shot them dead. they were dreaded terrorists from an organization, so and so. So then the cross-examination goes like this, Major Saab, these guys were dreaded terrorists? Yes, sir. You know their names? Yes, sir. Do you have a list of the terrorists of Manipur? Yes, sir. Are the names of these boys on that list? I don't know, sir. What do you mean? I've never seen that list, sir. Has any officer from your battalion seen that list? No, sir. Has any senior officer seen that list? No, sir. Can you produce that list? No, sir. Then why did you say they were terrorists? He said, because they were coming towards me from a particular village. Matlab? And so? It is said that that village harbors many terrorists. And so I asked the Major Saab, so you killed them because they were coming from a certain village? He said, yes, sir. Do you regret your actions? No, sir. Why? Because in my heart of hearts, I know that they are terrorists. And if they come again, I will do it again. And the end result of that inquiry was that this commission of inquiry appointed by the Supreme Court held that all the encounters were fake. Every single encounter was fake. And held that every single person killed, not a single one of them was a terrorist. Not only that, not a single one of them had a criminal record. So my dear friends, this war against the people of India continues. And it continues in Chhattisgarh. Thanks, sir. How many minutes? Yeah. And it continues in Chhattisgarh, where the killings of the Adivasis take place. And Manmohan Singh said, the greatest enemy of the Indian nation are the Naxalites. And look at the Naxalites of Chhattisgarh. I had the honor of going there, representing some of them, going to their jails, meeting with them. The Naxalites of these conflict states are persons without clothes, without food in their bellies, without education, without health care. Terrible, terrible poverty. And their only crime is that they have told the corporations, the mining corporations and so on, they told these corporations, we will not give our land. We will not allow you and your private armies and the security forces of India to come to the mineral-rich areas on which our houses are. The tragedy of India is that the poorest of the people live on the richest of the lands. We will not give our lands. We will not surrender our forests. We will not allow you to take our waters from our river. And it is that battle which the state has characterized as terrorist, Naxalite, and Maoist, and so on and so forth. And so, my dear friends, I've seen the spread of the civil war all across the country. And although we fight and we've had some victories from time to time, it is a very, very long and arduous battle. India, the largest democracy in the world, will take a very, very long time to come on track and to have true democracy in this wonderful country. Mr. Modi has now come to power, and the business community is looking forward to great development, as indeed there will be. And we must give him credit for engineering such a massive victory. But for all our human rights activists and my friends, people working in the legal system and outside, we are very afraid. Immediately after the victory, the stormtroopers of the party, the grassroots activists have taken heart and they become very bold. You might have read the story in the newspaper of an activist from Pune who made a simple right to information application, or on Facebook or something, he said something about the government and so on. And he was pulled out from his house and killed in broad daylight. Every day we hear stories of activists moving on the streets stifling freedom of speech and expression. Right to information activists have only to make an application for information about a particular thing, when there'll be people coming to your house and telling you, withdraw this application for information. And yesterday there was an Intelligence Bureau report saying that Greenpeace India is an anti-national organization, and a list of all the NGOs who have fought for environmental protection. And the Intelligence Bureau report says those who speak of environment protection are basically anti-industry, they are anti-development, and they are anti-national. And so my friends from Canada, thank you once again for this lovely, lovely invitation to be here. Thank you for all the support we've received. The Kalra Center for Human Rights Defenders, I do believe, will grow over the years. I must recognize, and surprisingly so, a dear, dear friend of mine, Navkiran Singh from the Punjab, who is here today amongst us. One of the most fearless fighters from the Punjab, who takes cases relentlessly against the government. These two friends of mine, Rajwinder Singh Bains, who came to Canada a few years ago, and Navkiran Singh, I take a lot of courage from them because they fight in an area where there is so much. I'm in Delhi, so I'm reasonably protected in the Supreme Court. But they are in the front line of the battle sometimes, in a state that is full of violence. So therefore pray for us, not for me personally, but pray for all the human rights activists who will come under attack in the years to come. Please think of India. You are very prominent and successful citizens of Canada. Canada is proud of you for what you've done. And this is indeed a beautiful country to belong to. But now I want to tell you, the time has come for you not to forget India and the pain and suffering of the activists and the people in India. And it is because they struggle, because they believe that a time will come, beshak, without doubt, where India will once again be free from the shackles of this tyranny, fascism and oppression. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.
Thank you, Dr. Gonsalve. At this point, I would like to call on stage Sardar Prem Singh Vinny, Sardar Gyan Singh Sandhu, and Dr. Amitpal Singh Shergill.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਗੋਂਸਾਲਵ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਗਿਫਟ ਸੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ